Hello and welcome back to the sixth and final, I swear this time, final, I do mean it, final video on the PIA 6.2 chapter, which is PDF output. I apologize that I went 6 videos on this one. Part of it is somewhere shorter because I got interrupted by daughters doing cute things and sometimes annoying things while I was recording. So sorry, I had to be a parent and lost my place and couldn't pick it back up without starting a new video. Anyways, here we are. So we're talking about InDesign's PDF output. And on this one, we're talking now about specifically how do you make your own? And I had left off the last video mentioning that at my previous job, we built our own for our company. Whenever we were going to print something in-house, we had one that was just the name of our company with all the settings that our different presses all preferred. We really had one main color press in the house, which was a Xerox digital press. That was my baby. I loved it. It was a good series. Anyways, that particular machine had a particular diet that it preferred for output and color and stuff. And so we put all those details into our specific personal preset. Let's take a look at how that works here. So the first thing you do is you define page range. Typically, you don't want to do anything other than all on this. If you build a preset that only takes the first page, I hope it's called cover because it's not going to be super useful. Always check all for that one. Then you go for Acrobat compatibility. This is one of those things that for the most part, especially if you're doing a custom one for your own stuff, you know what you need and you know how modern your equipment is. You can even test one and see if it works on your press to make sure that or not your press, your RIP really, to see if it can handle that level PDF. If you use a more recent Acrobat compatibility on your PDF you build, you will find that you can maintain your transparent objects and let the RIP figure that one out. Or if not, if you're using an older system that can't handle new PDFs, I'm talking about your RIP here, then you want to set it up so that it will be flattened for you here. One of the things is transparency, and we haven't talked about this too much here. When you're setting up a transparent effect on your computer in a graphics program, we'll go with Photoshop because it's the easiest one for me to describe because Photoshop's all pixel based. It gets a little hairier when it's vector because there's a couple more things involved in that one. But let's say you're using a pixel image in Photoshop and you have a transparent effect over it, a glow or a drop shadow or just a fade of something else on top of it, some sort of like watermark. Any case, when you are setting it up, when you have 2 different layers of visual information on top of each other in Photoshop, what you are doing is setting up math that has to be resolved later. Sure, you get a preview on your screen, but when you go to make your output and print it, it has to then figure out what it actually goes through and adds and calculates the value of the pixel on top and the pixel below it. And how do they interact depending on your blend modes? Is it screening it out? Is it multiplying? Is it just knocking it out and replacing it? It has to go through and resolve pixel by pixel what the top pixel does to the bottom pixel. If you have an older RIP, you have to do this on your own computer with Photoshop itself, because Photoshop's our example here, or InDesign or Illustrator, whichever, and have it flatten into the PDF flattened, which means it resolves all of those pixel questions of what does this stack of pixels make when you actually put it together. But if you're able to delay for the RIP will do a better job. The RIP is designed to only process raster images. Look what I did there. Ha ha ha. But anyways, the RIP's whole job is to be a high-end graphics engine that resolves these questions. If you have a more recent one that can handle the more recent Acrobat types, use the later Acrobat because those transparent objects will be resolved better and faster on a machine that's designed just to do that. I know some of the software is proprietary, so it's not exactly an apples to apples comparison, but realize that a very good desktop computer that you do your graphic design work on and your layout and stuff, let's go with a high-end Mac, you're looking at like $5,000 to $8,000 for a machine that can do the graphics you need. RIPs cost in the realm of $40,000 to $50,000 for a good one. So you're looking at a disparity of quality of parts and abilities here. Understand that the RIP is a better computer than your desktop, but it's so specialized it only does one thing. If I want to say about cars here, your graphics computer would be a very, very, very good Honda or Toyota. It can even be a performance Honda or performance Toyota, but it's still, no matter how fast it drives or how much load it can carry, it's still in the end a general purpose road vehicle. Comparing that to like a Ferrari or a Formula One race car, those are far more expensive, but they're also far more specialized. They're really, really good at the one thing they do, but you're not going to want to take a Ferrari grocery shopping. There's no trunk. Well, I meant Formula One racer. There's a little bit, a tiny bit of a trunk in the front on a Ferrari. Uh, Fun story. I once embarrassed myself at an auto show when I was a kid because I wanted to see the motor in a Ferrari at a car show. And I went and looked under the hood and yeah, turns out that's not where the motor is. Anyways, the point is, those aren't great for grocery shopping or for going to the hardware store and buying a new flat of flowers for your flower bed at home. That doesn't quite do it. You need a more general purpose vehicle. And your normal desktop computers running your Adobe stuff, that's more general purpose because you can also check your email, maybe play some games if you have the spare time. I don't know. They're good for more than just your graphics work. They do multiple things. The RIP, all it does is process pictures and turn them into screened halftone data. That is its job. And it's very good at it. So if you can set it up so that RIP is capable of doing this stuff, that's the way to go. You can choose your own compression styles, just like in the distiller. These last slides are going to go fast because we already talked about most of this. You can have your zip, your JPEG 2000, and automatic, where it chooses based off the image content. Again, this will have to do with what your system's like and what it works for, what works with what you normally do. Marks and bleeds. You can include bleed or not. You should include bleed. In fact, I find the most useful setting in all of this is the use document bleed settings, because that will force you to see what is going on in your document. And if it says 0, oops, you forgot your bleed. You can also force it to include an 1/8" bleed, but if you forgot to set it up and use it in the first place, that's going to be an empty 1/8" bleed where your graphics still cuts off at the page cut or at the trim and will still not have bleed, despite the fact that you said include bleed. Bleed is like a seatbelt. It doesn't work unless you use it. Slug area is extra space around the edge for printer's marks. Typically, you don't want to include this because those printer's marks typically want to be added manually. Even if you're the one doing it, you don't want to do it on your PDF. You want to do it on your layout sheet that you do later. And you're going to manually put in the marks and the specific color control bars that your color management system is looking for. You don't want this to do automatically. Some people try to look more printery and more professional by letting Adobe drop in extra color bars and all these marks that you don't need. And in fact, get in the way, because in the end, the person doing the actual output has to put in their own anyways. So all you're doing is giving them more work while trying to look cool. So it's actually more respectful to printers not to include that. However, crop marks are good. Include your crop marks, include your bleed area. Moving on. Color, you can choose all those things we already talked about. No conversion, convert to destination, preserving numbers. You can include those different types of perceptual things that you want to use, and it will control the color or not control the color or preserve the color as it is depending on your settings. Lastly, let's talk about styles or advanced stuff here. Fonts. No matter what, InDesign will respect embedding restrictions. If the font says no, the InDesign is a proper gentleman and respects that. It says, okay, the font said you can't be embedded. Sorry, buddy, no embedding. And it'll give you a warning if you can't do that. Again, you should pay for fonts that are good because it supports the people making them. And if you don't support the people making them, then they have to get other jobs, and maybe they still make them in their free time, but then there's less good fonts out there because they have to spend their whole day driving a bus or baking bread or something instead of creating good fonts. So although it's tempting to just steal and find them for free on the internet, the better ones cost money, and it costs money to maintain an industry of good fonts out there. So anyways, I'm off my soapbox. OPI, don't use this unless you know you're using OPI. You'll know it if you're using it because your company will be doing it as a company policy. Transparency flattener, again, you can choose to let it be flattened or not. Flatten it if you must, but if you're able to, let it be unflattened because that's better for everybody. Lastly, the summary. The summary will let you see everything you've already selected and let you know if you got it right. And you can save these settings and the name of it, what you want, for future use. Again, it's worth doing this if you know you're going to be printing to the same system over and over. Why rebuild this every time when you can build it once? Anyways, thanks for listening. Sorry this is a very long lecture. It was hard on me too. Talk to you guys soon.